Hey everybody, I'm Jack, and in today's video I'm going to be ranking the Bosses of Praey for the Gods, the recently released indie title heavily inspired by Shadow of the Colossus and Breath of the Wild. While I've seen hundreds, even thousands of complaints that this game is a blatant ripoff attempting to profit on SOTC's Colossi boss system, I'd say in countenance that this is simply a heartfelt love letter to an all-time game that defined a generation. It'd be completely unfair for me to make this video without giving credit to No Matter Studios, a team of 3 veteran developers who took it upon themselves to make this game. It's unbelievable what you guys did with such little manpower, and sure, there are a litany of issues and I'm not afraid to say that. However, among the uninteresting and even unenjoyable open world, the boss fights were fantastic and the stars of the game. Before we get into the rankings, since to my knowledge there are no official names for these guys, I'm using what I found on GamePretty.com. And secondly, I have absolutely no idea what the lore is, so I apologize on that note since it's usually fun to give some extra background. Either way, while I didn't particularly have a good time playing through Praey for the Gods, the beautiful design and grandiose scale of its bosses were extraordinarily good for such a low-budget title. With that said, let's get into it. Wow, this was horrible. I have nothing positive to say at all. Honest to God, this whole Yeti God boss thing was some of the most hateful 30-ish minutes of my life. I was so mad. The best way to put my feelings into words is, as you can tell, an irrational rant. I'm fine with bosses who can one-shot you, well, maybe not so much, but if done well, like any of the Shadow of the Colossus bosses, then I'm totally okay with that being a feature. That's the only comparison I'm going to make between these two games, not because one is significantly better than the other. Instead, it's going to get repetitive not only for me, but for you. And since the drawbacks are obvious, hey, guess what? Trees are brown. I mean, yeah, no duh, it's pointing out what's already known. Anyways, the Yeti is essentially a walking billboard showing off everything wrong with this game using giant pointy red arrows. The knockback shockwave effect is so tedious, not only because your character is as fast as a motor scooter, but also how long you take to get up. The good thing is that you get one shot. So the limp mechanic isn't really relevant at all, as you'll just get squished like a bug beforehand. I wish I could give credit to the arena design, of which features a tree and ruins that you hypothetically can use to get a height advantage, but the Yeti will either simply destroy them with a cute little audio bug joining in because why not, or hello? Now, is there anything redeeming? Nope, that was a setup. There's such a minute gap between when you can climb on his arm to when he takes it off the ground, and thanks to you having to recalibrate balance, I mean, that might as well have been a feature alongside hunger, sleep, cold, and eating shit. If you get hit by the knockback, it is impossible to climb up, yada yada yada. You have to wait through an entire other cycle before you even have the chance to damage him. He has this, tendency to crush you with his hand when you go for his shoulder sigils, that is, if you even have enough stamina to stay up there for the whole 3-hit period, although to be fair, once you do bang through his arm points, the fight is all but over unless, of course, you die. Then you have to start over entirely. I'm not trying to be overtly rash for the sake of being an asshole, but a boss that gets me so mad I have to use my therapy techniques to prevent me from punching my dick in has something to be said about its design. It's not the lowest spot, but point out one difference between the new Halloween and the one from, like, 2018. Nada. I fancy a chaos-induced endgame, take the Icon of Sin, Soul of Cinder, or Calamity Ganon, but all of those are, well, there's no way around it, they're good. The Aldernari, pardon my Norse, is a highlight to the kid track speed you climb, run, eat, sleep, walk, fall, shoot GMO blueberries among an abundance of other activities, and it is so long. So with an Elgato, your average game clip, let's say in this scenario it's 5 minutes long, will take up about 250 megabytes of space. My clip, this clip, was 4.6 gigabytes. Long isn't even an understatement, it's just like straight up wrong, and after 58 minutes, I quit the game. I'm just not gonna do it. Sorry. Let's move on. This is an hour after officially quitting. I'm back here. I did actually come back. Okay, so this is 4 days after all of that was recorded. I was totally done editing the video. It was prepped and uploaded for tomorrow. This is Tuesday night, by the way. I just felt it was unprofessional for me to not beat it, so I actually, for real this time, did do the Hyrule Bass, and I had a decent time doing it, to be honest. That isn't to say the 30 or whatever minutes it takes to get there, endlessly dying to pot shots you can't even see and killing Wolnir reskins en masse gets a pass, but it did leave a taste in my mouth. Not sour, not sweet, just like when you eat green beans. I do think the Arkham Knight background was really neat looking, not to mention all of the Aldernari as well, but point stands, it was severely frustrating and double if you made a mistake on the fish and had to climb all the way to the top from the very bottom of Firelink. Cheers. I f***ing hate this boss. What's a 7-letter word? Tedious. As much as I love the massive scale of these bosses, fighting the Beetlejuice of gods felt as if it was made to be as frustrating as possible. Blessed be us all, this thing is completely optional, and thanks to the overworld traversal being more miserable than flying southwest cross-country, you probably won't find more than 1 or 2 champions at most anyways. I ran into a second one and f***ed right off immediately, although with no benefits I didn't have a reason to even take more than one on, once again that is to my limited knowledge of the game. Even if there was some grand reward, maybe a weapon that lasts longer than a Boko bat, I wouldn't care enough to go out of my way to find, then beat the remaining champions of what also, due to their, as I said in the beginning, tedious nature. With only 1 sigil on its back, it does everything in its power to be as flagrantly annoying as possible, with it requiring 3 separate treks up his backside at a minimum to beat him. The only way to get him down in the first place is to bite his ankles, and with the knockback effect I've already mentioned a few times, along with weapon degradation thoroughly smothering Dark Souls 2's degrading mechanic, this takes forever. There is a unique level of satisfaction I got from beating this thing, above all the feeling of never having to stick my ass in the arena with him ever again. I like Mario bosses, Soulsborne bosses, all those suits because I don't have to scavenge around like I'm looking for a tick on my dog to find their weak points. They're either gigantic, bulbous red spots or their entire body is a hitbox. This would be higher if either I wasn't such a doofus or its sigils weren't triggered by motion sensors, but I slowly seethed in anger watching boss tutorials beat the boar in like 9 or 10 minutes while I took 35. A measly 25 minutes of which were spent trying to find only the last spot. Eventually I just gave up and watched a playlist of boss tutorials, and that saved me from smashing my 12 frame per second Xbox into a million bits of plastic. Since I record using a 2010 MacBook Pro, my Elgato game recorder, meant for whatever ancient Mac OS I use, gives me a pop-up notification every time the frame rate drops below 60, and this game's frame rate, maybe it's my Xbox, but it's definitely one of those two for certain, is already in the bin to start with, nonetheless when you have a gigantic bull running straight for your crotch. It's vaguely unclear what to do at first, that is until you accidentally or maybe just notice the 3 carnival bells that when stood on anger the boar or something and make it ram headfirst into them, knocking itself out like that dude trying to enter platform 9 3/4. You then climb on top and slowly but surely finish the job. The boar is a neat idea that's just done better in all other bosses similar to it, although I praise the leniency it has with it not killing you in a single blow. I dig a living, aptly fightable Karth the Sandworm, but even with a tutorial there's so much unintentional ambiguity as to what you're supposed to do. The Devourer shoots lasers, and there's a select few of those pillar ball things that rise from the ground with a pressure plate. Connect the dots, you make the worm shoot the lamp. This opens up a sonic sound wave trap that, like Batman uses to beat Man-Bat in the animated series, that knocks the worm down to the floor so you promptly climb up. The best part of this fight is the physical design of the Devourer, featuring outward spikes that can serve as platforms for you to regain stamina, although if you make even the slightest mistake in drop angle due to the unnecessarily realistic gliding, you're going to have to climb all the way back up, and it gets very repetitive very quickly. Since the Worm God is a straight pillar, this should not take very long at all with no mistakes, but yet again is an example of how a minor fix to a mechanic, in this case just simply making the climbing faster, would turn a boss from mediocre average to legitimately good. This is best described as shockingly forgettable. It's a flying serpent, yet I remember as much about this as I do about Sorbetti from Galaxy 2, but I'm lying. Stars spin his nose and he rolls around in the little arena. The Dreki is another half gimmick-based boss in which you unlock a central air vent through 3 points around the outskirts of the frozen island. This is all done while he pummels you with admittedly easy to dodge spurts of fireballs, and from that point you float in the sky until he conveniently swoops down, allowing you to get on top. He has 3 sigils across his long body, 1 in the front, 1 in the middle unlocked through moving the chain things, and a 3rd on his head. Climbing to the head isn't so bad, as for the majority of the time he flies at an angle where you can run instead of crawl, so stamina is barely a factor, and if need be he has targets everywhere. Once again, this fight isn't very long nor challenging, but in the moment is palatable. I have a very weak soft spot for introductory bosses, such as how I think The Last Giant is better than well over half of Dark Souls 2's catalog, and the Satyr was an awesome start to this whole thing. It was so good it made me drop my worries about this game being too realistic only for those 7 or 8 minutes given, although for those 7 or 8 minutes factors depending, it's a level of excitement the game never hits again, odd as it is to say that about the number 3 boss. I wish that every boss ever started like this, sort of an ominous thing you interact with. I mean, with like the Witches of Hemwick, whatever, yeah, sure. But in this case, the inauspicious sigil you climb up and hit awakens a gigantic beast from the ground itself, and it was just such a great moment. The design to this is money, with 3 condensed sigils on its back, shoulder, and head, once again allowing for completion in one go, a trend you'll notice is common with all the recent bosses. Getting up there is a system of choice with you having the option to either grapple using a target or climb his leg, and oh my god, he doesn't have a shockwave effect. Look at how much better the game is without this. I always take the more action-packed route, although having the option to quickly get back up if you fall off or anything like that is useful and saves time, keeping the satyr engaging and even exciting. Yes, it's been done before. Yes, it's not as good as the original. But also, yes, it was a lot of fun. The beginning is basically the Drekkie, but instead of flying on him, you have to shoot the Krogon, flashbang, fades Whitey's on the ground knocked out. From that point, it's just a matter of staying on top of your stamina, which is honestly not that hard if you take advantage of the moments when it's flying straight. Hanging from his underside is a really exciting premise, and there is a lot of satisfaction I got from slowly making my way up the Griffin as well. I find the last sigil to be one of, if not the best in the entire game, seeing as you literally climb on his face, and while the Drekkie was somewhat disappointing, the similar but vastly superior Krogon made up for No Matter's half-baked first attempt at a flying boss and rightfully earns his place at number 2. I heard horror stories about this thing beforehand, but it looked cool, so I prime myself with that notion of, I mean, he looks great, so he can't suck, right? Maybe I wouldn't view the Thrall in such a high regard if it wasn't for my positive outlook before fighting him, but I think it delivered well beyond what any other boss in the game could, and in my eyes is the true finale. No other boss, not even a full-scale Hell Invasion, has the atmospheric imposition featured with the Thrall, and while I'm not the biggest fan of catapulting Yoshi beans, I like how it was just the base for opening up the fight. He has a bunch of different weak points on him, visibly obvious thanks to them being huge and purple, with the most important one, the gigantic circular apparatus connecting his Teslas on his back, having its own cutscene. I've never tried, well, I've only fought him once, but still I've never tried beating this thing without destroying that wheel, but either way, if I had to give a pointer, just note that this isn't the Satyr. While it may appear the same, even move the same, he has an immense knockback effect that can, well, I don't know, put you in cardiac arrest. You have to grapple onto his dangling dreidel, not climb onto his leg, although that is possible, then slowly move from each limb to the next. He has a very similar design to Valis from SOTC with the backplate, but features a Death Star laser that not only one-shots but has a very fair and neat combo. There are 3 variants to this attack, with each one forcing you to shift position on his arm to avoid taking damage. You can actually use this move to your advantage even by making him shoot his chains that sometimes block your path, and one specifically is required to get destroyed as a sigil is hidden underneath. Once inside his body, you have to hit a timer that opens up the Kyber Crystal unit, and even though I hear a ticking clock in the background, I think it's wrong. Crawling up his beard, head, and figuring out the puzzle that is the Thrall's body was not only unique, but absolutely quality. I love this boss, and as the final of the Core 7, what a way to end it. Thanks so much for watching. This is a bit of a throwback to The Force Unleashed 2, making a video on a game I actually dislike. I love ranting, I feel most comfortable when I'm irrationally angry, so thanks to Pray for the Gods for making this video as entertaining as it was. However, it is most definitely an accomplishment on No Matter's behalf that they made a few great bosses as they have, but as I'm sure you're aware, in my opinion this game fell well short in terms of being a successor to Shadow of the Colossus. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment on thoughts, game recommendations, or whatever you're thinking about. Once again, thanks so much for watching, and with that said, deuces.